Good evening. I hope you've gone through the first video where we started off with the second chapter and we did dimensional analysis. I think we discussed the first application of dimensional analysis where if you're given an equation, you can check whether the equation is correct using these dimensions. Now I'll do one more example so that you will get a little more used to how to check if an equation is correct if you know the dimensions of the different quantities, and that's what you mean by dimensional analysis, using it to check the correctness of a given equation. So here what we're going to do is the next question, that is the one after the last question in the previous session. Okay. Now if you're asked to check whether this equation VE equal to root of 2gm by r is correct. First of all, let me tell you about this equation. Some of the equations that you see in this chapter may be very new to you, but don't worry. All of these formulas or equations you're going to come across in one of the chapters in 11th standard. Here, this equation you will come across in the chapter called gravitation, where we are talking about the escape velocity from the surface of the earth. Escape velocity means, like if you're launching a rocket and all that, the minimum velocity required for a particle to escape the pull of the earth is what you call as escape velocity. Now here, this g is called the gravitational constant. It is different from small g. Small g is the acceleration due to gravity. This capital G is a constant. It's called the gravitational constant. And in the table that I sent you on WhatsApp, the dimensional equation for gravitational constant is given to you. This will be the mass of the earth. This will be the mass of the planet, whichever planet. For the escape velocity could be calculated for any planet. So here this m will be the mass of the planet and r will be the radius of the planet. So you know all the quantities here. This is the escape velocity, minimum velocity that a particle must have or an object must have to escape the pull of the earth. This is the gravitational constant. This is mass of the earth if you're talking about planet earth, and this is the radius of the earth. Now there are two terms in this equation. One term is here, the other term is here, both of them separated by an equality sign. What we said as a principle of homogeneity is an equation is correct only if all the terms have the same dimensions. Here we have two terms and we need to check if both of them have the same dimension, then your equation is correct. Now velocity, escape velocity will have the same dimension as velocity. So dimension of escape velocity VE is LT raised to minus 1. Now here I would have in the that table that I sent you, I would have written m0 L t raised to minus 1. M raised to 0, anything raised to 0 is 1. So even if you don't write that, if you simply write LT raised to minus 1, it's okay. If you want, you can write m raised to 0 also. So that is on the left hand side. For this term, please remember 2 is just a number. So you don't need to write any dimensions because numbers don't have dimensions. So I will ignore the 2 and the remaining is root of gm by r, which is g has the dimensions m raised to minus 1 L cube t raised to minus 2. This you may check, it's there behind your textbook, or you may check in that table that I sent you. Then we have mass. This is mass of the planet. So length and time don't appear there. So I will simply write mass raised to 1. Divided by, we have radius. Radius appears in terms of length. Radius of the planet is measured in terms of length. So mass and time do not appear in the denominator. So I'll simply write L raised to 1. If you want, you can write m0 L t raised to 0. That's also okay. Now this whole thing has to be raised to half because this is coming under the square root. Now I'll multiply these two. This is going to be equal to m raised to minus 1 and here we have m raised to 1. When you multiply the two, the powers get added. So minus 1 plus 1 will be 0. So we have m raised to 0. Then L cube, here there's an L division. So this will come up as minus 1. So we have L squared because 3 minus 1 is 2. Then t raised to minus 2. There is no other t here. So simply t raised to minus 2. The whole thing raised to half. So this is going to be equal to m raised to 0 into half is 0, and m raised to 0 I don't have to write because anything raised to 0 is 1. 2 raised to half will be when you this is a power, so you need to multiply. So 2 into half is 1. So we have L raised to 1. Minus 2 into half will be minus 1. So t raised to minus 1, and that is how we have found out the dimension of the right hand side. So you will see that this term and this term both have the same dimensions, Lt raised to minus 1, and therefore we may say that this equation is dimensionally correct. So I hope you've got kind of understood how you can check whether a given equation is correct dimensionally. Simply take each term, check each of these terms if they have the same dimension, then principle of homogeneity says they are dimensionally correct. We now go into the second application of dimensional analysis. The second application, in the second application, what you can do is, if you know on what factors a physical quantity depends, then you can find an equation or relation that connects the physical quantity to these these factors. For example, I hope you know in 9th standard you have learned the relation potential energy is equal to mgh. Potential energy is equal to mgh. Kinetic energy is equal to half mv square. So you know potential energy is dependent on mgh. So you know it is dependent on mass. You know it's dependent on acceleration due to gravity. You know it is dependent on height where the body is. So if you know the factors, so these are called the factors that determine the physical quantity potential energy. So you can use dimensional analysis to get this equation if you know on what factors on what factors does this physical quantity depend. Okay, this is very simple, so we are not going to do that. I'll show you something else. Now suppose they tell you, I'll read the question. Derive the formula for time period of oscillation of a simple pendulum. If you know that the factors that determine the period of oscillation are the mass of the bob m, length of the pendulum L, and acceleration due to gravity g. So here they are telling you the time period of oscillation of a simple pendulum. A simple pendulum, I hope you know, has a bob tied to a string, and you can pull the bob to one end and then leave it. So this pendulum will exhibit oscillations. Time period of an oscillation is the time taken for it to start from, let's say, the left extreme, go to the right extreme, and come back here to the left extreme. So that is what you call as oscillation, one oscillation, and the time taken to complete one oscillation is what you call as the time period. So here they are telling you that this time period of this oscillation of the pendulum, time taken for one oscillation, depends on three factors. One, it depends on the mass of that pendulum, the bob of the pendulum. The bob is that metal ball that will be tied to that string. So it depends on the mass of the bob. Then they're telling you it depends on the length of that string. And they're telling you it depends on acceleration due to gravity, small g, which on earth you know is 9.8 meter per second square. So the factors are given to you: mass of the bob, length of the string, and acceleration due to gravity. So find out how are they the physical quantity related to these factors. Bring out an equation or a relation that connects the physical quantities to these. So then what you do is, you know that they've given you that the time period we know is dependent on, I'll give the proportionality sign because I'll tell you, it's dependent on they said mass, it is dependent on length, and the acceleration due to gravity. Okay. Now the actual formula what we're going to finally derive is going to be 1 by 2 pi root of L by d. This is what we're going to get. You'll be learning this in the last but one chapter of your textbook, oscillations. This formula you're going to learn. If you look into your textbook, you'll see this formula. Now this 1 by 2 pi is a constant. Using dimensional analysis, we cannot find the constant. For that, they will all in the question they'll already give you the constant. So here in the question they've already told you that the constant of proportionality is 1 by 2 pi. That is already given in the question. Okay. When I read the question, I didn't read that, but the constant is already given to us in the question. They said that the constant of proportionality is 1 by 2 pi. So this is a time period, the time taken for one complete oscillation of the simple pendulum. This is the length of the pendulum, and this is the acceleration due to gravity. So this is the formula that we are going to derive using dimensional analysis. So you see the time period is directly proportional to the square root of length, and it is inversely proportional to square root of acceleration due to gravity, and mass does not appear in the formula. So it is independent of mass. But in the question they told you this is how it depends. So what we'll do is we will write down, let this be power A, let this be raised to power B, and let this be raised to power C. So if you were able to find out A, B and C, values of A, B and C, then you can relate the quantity. Like if you're going to come to this, what will you get A as? You should get A as 0, because m raised to 0, anything raised to 0 is 1, and it does not appear in the formula. See? So you should get A as 0, which means m raised to 0 you will get as 1. Now you know that length is here going to be directly proportional to square root of, time period is directly proportional to square root of length. So B should become raised to half, because square root means half. Then you see it is inversely proportional to acceleration due to gravity. So it's going to come in the denominator, the square root. So that means C, while solving, you will get as minus half, which means you will go to the denominator square root. Okay. So I hope you understood that why we are raising it to these powers. What we are going to do is use principle of homogeneity, find the values A, B and C, and then put your final equation. So here I may write T is equal to, the constant is given to you, 1 by 2 pi m raised to A, L raised to B and G raised to C. Okay. What does principle of homogeneity say? It says that all the terms in an equation must have the same dimensions. Otherwise, it is not correct. How many terms do we have here? We'll take this whole thing as one term and this as one term, because there are no plus or minus signs here. Everything is a multiplication. So this whole thing is a term. This is one term. Okay. What is the term, dimensional formula for time period? Time period, only time. Mass and length are not appearing there. So we may write m raised to 0, L raised to 0 and T raised to 1 is the dimensional formula for time period, because only time is there. Mass and length does not appear in time period. This is equal to, this 1 by 2 pi is a number, so it does not have any dimensions. So you don't bother to write the dimensions for this. Then we have m, mass is it, this is mass, so dimensional formula will be m, length is not there, time is not there, this is raised to A, length would be just L, because length is mass and time not there, raised to B, and this we said is acceleration due to gravity, which is simply acceleration, and in that table that I sent you, please check, acceleration is Lt raised to minus 2. Mass does not appear for acceleration. It is displacement by time into time. So length Lt raised to minus 2, this raised to C. Now I'm going to club all this together. So this will be, this is power 1, right? So 1 into A is m raised to A. This is also power 1. So 1 into B is L raised to B. This is power 1. So 1 into C is C. So this will be L raised to C, and T raised to minus 2 into C is minus 2C. So minus 2C. So I may have here m raised to A, L raised to B and L raised to C. Both are there. So if you are multiplying these two, then B plus C, the powers get added up. So this will be B plus C and T raised to minus 2C. So we have, on the left hand side, we have m raised to 0, L raised to 0, T raised to 1. So principle of homogeneity says the dimensions, dimension means the powers to which we have raised these base quantities, must be the same. Then only you have this equation as a correct equation. So which means that the dimension of mass is 0 here must be equal to A. The dimension of length here is 0 must be equal to B plus C. And the dimension of time here is 1, which must be equal to minus 2C. Only then, by principle of homogeneity, this equation will be correct. So, we will now write that equation and solve for A, B, C. Okay. So, we have here, I am comparing and writing, 0 must be equal to A. So, A must be equal to 0. Then B plus C must be equal to 0 here because dimensions of length must be the same. Dimension of time period is minus 2C. Here the dimension of time period is 1. So must be equal to 1. So that if I now solve these equations, I will get A I got as 0 minus 2C. So which means C is equal to minus 1 by 2. I took this to the right hand side. I'm going to substitute the value of C here. So that B, C is minus half must be equal to 0 or B must be equal to half. So I got A as 0. So I'll write T is equal to 1 by 2 pi M raised to A. So M raised to A is 0. L raised to B. So that is L raised to B is half. And G raised to C. C I got as minus half. Now I'll combine this whole thing and write time period is equal to 1 by 2 pi. Mass does not appear in the formula because anything raised to 0 is 1. Then both are raised to power half, which means both will come in square root. This is positive and this is negative, which means this will come in the numerator and this will come in the denominator. And we have our equation L by G square root. So this is the equation for time period of any simple pendulum in terms of its length and acceleration due to gravity. So this is how you can derive the relation for a physical quantity in terms of its factors by doing dimensional analysis. One drawback you would have seen is you can't find the constant here. Constant they'll have to give you in the question. You can't find the constant using dimensional analysis, and that is a drawback of this dimensional analysis. One more question we'll do so that you will get more comfortable with this. The next question that I've taken is they have told you find the time period of revolution of a satellite which depends on the radius of the orbit, the mass of the planet and the gravitational constant. And this is a question. So they're telling you time period of revolution of a planet depends on, they told you, the radius of the orbit. It depends on the mass of the planet and the gravitational constant capital G. I happen to take both the questions from that chapter gravitation. This relation also you will be learning in that chapter gravitation. Okay. Now they're telling you, so let's check what this is. See, any planet you're talking about, the Earth, you know that the Earth goes around the Sun. So there are, what is time period of revolution of a satellite? The time taken for one complete revolution, and they're telling you it depends on the radius of that orbit. Orbit means the circular path taken by the planet. So if your Sun is here and your planet takes a circular orbit around it, then this is the radius of orbit. Then they're talking about mass of the planet, and this is that constant which I told you is called the gravitational constant, which is a constant for all bodies. Unlike small g, capital G is a constant. Small g is a constant for a given planet. Okay. So here they have given us the constant. They've told you to take it as 1. So we may write T equal to, so I may write this as A, B and C. So we now need to find the values of A, B and C. Using principle of homogeneity, then we can find out the equation. So this is equal to, radius is in terms of, time period. What is the dimensional formula? just 10. Mass and length don't appear here. So if you want, you can write it as m raised to 0, L raised to 0, T raised to 1 here. This is equal to proportionality constant. I told you they said take as 1. So this will be, radius of the orbits will be measured in terms of length. So we may write L raised to A. Then mass of the planet is in mass, no length and time there. So this is m raised to B. And this, please by heart from your table, is m raised to minus 1 L cube T raised to minus 2, the whole thing we raised to C. So this I've given, again I'm repeating, it's there in the table that I sent you. Okay. Now we combine the whole thing. This will be L raised to 1 into A is L raised to A. This is raised to 1, so that is m raised to 1 into B is B. M raised to minus 1 into C, that will be m raised to minus C. L raised to 3 into C is 3C. T raised to minus 2 into C is minus 2C. Okay. This is, first of all I'll write m. You have B here and minus C here. So that will be, add the powers because you're multiplying here. So B minus C. L raised to, you have an A here and a 3C here. So A plus 3C, and T you just have the minus 2C. Okay. And on the left hand side we have m raised to 0, L raised to 0, T raised to 1. So principle of homogeneity says the equation is, you can get the correct equation by knowing that the dimensions on the left side of this term and this term must be the same. So then if I combine, if I check, I know that 0, the dimension of mass here is 0, here it is B minus C. So the two must be equal to, each B minus C must be equal to 0. The dimension of L is 0 here, here it is A plus 3. So I know A plus 3C must be equal to 0. Then comparing here, dimension of T is 1 here, here it is minus 2C. So I know that minus 2C must be equal to 1. Knowing this, I can now solve for ABC. When I solve for ABC, solving I think you've done in 10th standard math. So it's not going to be difficult for you. Solving equations for variables you've done in math for 10th standard. Okay. If you do not remember, please check. So from here, I know, from this equation I know C is equal to minus 1 by 2 because I took this to the right hand side. Then B minus C is 0. So that means if I take C to the right hand side, B and C are equal, which means B must also be equal to C, that is minus 1 by 2. Then I know A plus 3C is equal to 0. That means A must be equal to, I'll take this to the right hand side as minus 3C. Or A must be equal to minus 3 into C is what? Minus half, minus 1 by 2, and we know that will be plus 3 by 2. Okay. Now here I may substitute the values for T. So T equal to proportionality constant I am taking as 1. We have R raised to A. A is 3 by 2. Then M raised to B. B is minus 1 by 2. And capital G is raised to C. That's again minus 1 by 2. Now you will see this 3 by 2 can be written as 3 into 1 by 2, right? So we have a 1 by 2 everywhere. So the whole thing is under square root. Only this and only thing, this and this will come in the denominator because of the negative sign. So we may write T equal to, everything comes under the square root because all of them have that power half. So G and M I can write in the denominator. So that I'll write G into M square. Both are minus half, so both are in the denominator. On top, R raised to half is taken care of by the square root. Remaining I have here R cube. Okay. So we have a formula for time period of revolution of a planet as root of r cube by g into m. I hope you understood this. Here the half is taken care of by the square root. Remaining 3 is what I wrote as r cube. Okay. So that is the second example that I had chosen for you. You try this, and I will be sending you a worksheet which we'll discuss online. So you'll do a few more questions based on this. So I think by then you'll be fine. Okay. Now the next topic that we need to go through is errors. Errors, when I sent you the notes, I had printed a few definitions for you. That is absolute error, then relative error and percentage error. See, this error is, if you go into the lab and you start doing an experiment, you will be taking lots of measurements like maybe if you're asked to find out the time period of a pendulum, you see that it is dependent on the acceleration due to gravity, it is dependent on the length, it is dependent on these factors. So while you're doing the experiment, some kind of errors can creep into the readings that you are taking. And in the notes that I've sent you, you will see that I've listed out the kind of errors that can creep into your readings, the random error, the personal errors. So go through that theory part where the different kinds of errors I've printed and given you. What I'm going to now teach you, those definitions for absolute error, relative error and percentage error will be little more clear to you by doing one example in your textbook. So when we do that example here, you will clearly understand what you mean by absolute error, relative error and percentage error. The other different kinds of errors, please read from your notes. You will now take, please look at the question on page 25. That's what we're going to do. So we have this example 2.7. See, all the other examples and the exercise question we'll do online. But this example I've chosen just so that I can explain to you what we mean by this absolute error, what we mean by relative error and what we mean by percentage error. And I told you these error means the difference in the readings, the errors in the readings that can creep up when you're doing an experiment. So in this question they are telling you, we measure the period of oscillation of a simple pendulum. In successive measurements, the readings turn out to be 2.63. So the first reading they said is 2.63. Then they said it is seconds. Next one is 2.56 seconds. 56. Then we have 2.42 seconds. Then there's a 2.71 second. And then there's a 2.80 second. So this student has taken 5 readings for oscillation, simple pendulum. So he was asked to find out the time period of a simple pendulum. So what he has gone to the lab and done is, you pull your pendulum to the right, leave it, and then it will go to the extreme right, come back to the extreme left, and you know the time taken for that one complete oscillation is what you call as a time period. So what this student has done is, he has measured it 5 times. First time he started the stopwatch, the pendulum has completed one oscillation and he recorded the time as 2.63. Next time again he started the stopwatch, he left the simple pendulum, it went up till here, came back here, and he got the reading as 2.56. Now you see that these two are different, which means that there is some error in the readings because of probably he was not quick enough to start the stopwatch. Personal errors can come. There may be errors in the measurement. The stopwatch itself may be having some error in it. So next time he took it, he got 2.42. The fourth time he got 2.71. And the fifth time he got 2.80. So he has taken the same reading 5 times and 5 times it's got different values, showing that there is an error. So this is what I'm going to call as A. That is the measured value. Measured value of the reading is what you call as A. I'll write the heading here as measured value. Okay. Now next one, you are going to take the mean average of this. How do you find the average? You add each one, and because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 readings, you divide by 5. you will get the average. And that is what I'm going to do now. A mean, meaning average or mean value of this observed reading, and that is what you call as the true value of these measurements. The actual value or the true value will be the mean of these values. So when I added it, I got 13.12, and when I divided it with 5, I got it as 2.624, which I rounded it off as 2.62 seconds. Okay, all these measurements were taken in seconds. Now, absolute error, meaning I take the delta A, this is called the absolute error. Let me explain that to you, what you mean by the absolute error. See, you know this is the true value. Now your 2.63, the first measured value, is not here. It's 0.01 more than the actual value, right? So there is some error here. So when you subtract 2.63 minus 2.62, you are going to get 0.01. Look at the second value, 2.56. It's lesser than the actual value. So if you subtract 2.56 minus 2.62, you will see the difference between the observed value and the true value. And that I found out to be minus 0.06. Next, I'm going to find out. So true value is here. My measured value, third measured value is 2.542. Let me see what error has happened here. How much difference has happened there. So when I subtract this minus this, I got minus 0.20. My fourth value is 2.71, greater than the true value by 0.09. And the fifth value is 2.80, greater than the true value by 0.18. I got it by subtracting. So this is what you call as the absolute error. Absolute error, the word absolute tells you you need to take only the positive values. So if you get a negative value, don't bother about that. You just take the positive value. Okay, we just need to know how far is your measured value from the true value. So the difference between the measured value or the observed reading and the true value, that difference is what you call as absolute error. The absolute value of that difference between the observed reading and the true reading is what you call as absolute error. Now next what I'll do is I'll find the mean of this. So that is delta A mean. Again, what do? Add each of these values, divide by 5. So I got this as 0.54. When I divided by 5, I got it as 0.11 seconds. Okay. So I've got delta A mean. Now I'm going to define what you mean by relative error. Relative error is defined as, okay, this is our A mean. This is our A mean. Okay. Now, relative error is defined as delta A by A mean. Delta A mean by A mean. That is what we have as relative error. So, a ratio of, I hope you remember this value here. So, ratio of delta A mean to A mean is what you call as the relative error. So this will be delta A mean is 0.11 divided by 2.62. I got the value as 0.0419. I rounded it off to 0.042. Okay, so this is called the relative error. Now, the percentage error, the last thing they will ask you is for percentage error. Relative error multiplied by 100, you will convert it into percentage. So, your percentage error is 0.042 into 100, which will be 4.2, round off to 4%. So, this is your percentage error. Simply relative error multiplied by percentage error will give you the, 100 will give you the percentage error. So what is absolute error? I hope you understood. Is the measured value, the difference between the observed reading and the true value. The absolute value of that difference is what you call as absolute error. Then relative error is delta A mean by A mean. That is the absolute error divided by a mean, you will get the relative error, multiplied by 100, you get the percentage error. Okay. Then we have another topic where we discuss what will happen when quantities are added or subtracted or multiplied or divided. Okay, that means each reading that you take will have an error. For example, what we did now, the time period itself has an error. So combination of errors means, suppose you're taking two readings. For example, suppose I ask you to find out the area of this sheet. Then what will you do? Measure the length, measure the breadth, multiply L into B to get the area. But as you measure, you may have made an error in the reading, the actual reading. The true reading may not be the reading that you're taking. So there will be a reading error in this value you have taken. While you take the breadth also, you might have created an error. So that when you multiply the two, you will still have an error in the you may not be actually finding out the exact value of the area. There may be an error in the answer. So in that case, what happens? That's what we are going to check. Now suppose you're adding two quantities. You found out some measurement A, some measurement B, and you're asked to add up the two. Let's see what will be the error in the final result. So if the final answer is A plus B, that means you have measured A, you have measured B, and you're going to add it to give the final result Z. So if there is an error here and there is an error in this reading, surely there is going to be an error in Z. Now, Z plus or minus delta Z. What is this delta Z I told you? Delta A, absolute error. Remember, we just talked about that. What is this absolute error? The absolute error is the difference between the measured value and the actual value. Okay, so it could be plus or minus. Remember, we are taking only the absolute values. So your measured quantity could be greater than the actual value or less than the actual value by this delta Z. So that is why we are writing the final result may not be the actual value. It may be the actual value, this delta Z, which is the absolute value, may be added or subtracted to get the true value. Okay, this is equal to A. A also, the reading A also has an error, absolute error, could be plus or minus delta A. Why plus or minus? Again, I'm telling you, how did we find the absolute error? When we simply find the difference, it could have been a plus or it can be a minus. Absolute value, we only take the positive. So your measured reading plus or minus delta A will be the true value. Plus B also can have a absolute error, delta B. Okay. Now I'm going to open the bracket. Z plus or minus delta Z must be equal to A plus or minus delta A plus B plus or minus delta B. I combine this A plus B together. Plus or minus I take outside, and here you have delta A plus delta B. I took the plus or minus outside. So we have Z plus or minus delta Z. So here, what is this A plus B is Z, right? A plus B is Z. So we may write Z plus or minus delta Z. This A plus B I'll replace with Z plus or minus delta A plus delta B. So the maximum possible error. So if you compare these two, left hand side and the right hand side, this Z plus or minus here it's common. So you may write delta Z is equal to delta A plus delta B. So the error in your final result will be the sum of the errors in the individual readings. Whatever quantity, so this will have a error, absolute error. This will also have an absolute error, delta B. Add the two absolute errors and you will get the absolute error in the final result. Now the good thing is, I think you don't need the derivation. It's there in the textbook, but most schools don't teach the derivation, but you will need this information to do sums. So please check if your school is teaching the derivation. In that case you learn. Otherwise just remember the final answer. That is, whenever you add two two quantities to get a final answer. The absolute error in the two quantities, the sum of the absolute errors will give you the error in the final result. Okay. Same thing if you're going to do for subtraction. If you're subtracting two quantities, let's check. The final result, absolute error in the final result, z plus or minus delta z. That is, this is the error, this is the reading given to you. So this will be the error in the final result. This is equal to A will have an absolute error delta A and B will have an error delta B. I hope you are okay with why I am writing plus or minus. You need to go back to the previous section where I explained how we found out this absolute error. Remember, we had this A and then we found out the mean value as a true value, and then we found out absolute error as a difference between these two. Here this could be a plus, it could be a minus, but we take only when we define absolute error, we take only the absolute values. But it could be plus or minus, greater than the true value. Your measured value could be greater than the true value, or it could be less than the true value. Okay, here I'm again going to open the bracket on the right hand side. Here there is a minus. Okay, we are subtracting. So A plus or minus delta A minus B minus into plus or minus plus delta B. I can combine this and write A minus B. Take the plus or minus outside and you have delta A plus delta B. It doesn't matter because here anyway plus and minus is here. Here also plus and minus is here. So you can take this out and write plus delta B. So here on the left hand side we have Z plus or minus delta Z. Now you know A minus B. We are doing A minus B. Okay. So we know A minus B is Z. So I'll replace this with Z. So compare the left hand side and the right hand side to see that delta Z is equal to delta A plus delta B. So again you have seen whether you're adding two quantities or you're subtracting two quantities, the error in the final result, the absolute error in the final result will always be the sum of the absolute error in the individual readings. Okay, whether you're adding or subtracting, the quantity will get added or subtracted, the reading A minus B. But here the errors will always get added up. Then we have, if you multiply two quantities. Suppose you are asked to multiply two quantities. Okay. Please note again, derivation you learn only if it is taught in school. Otherwise, you learn only the final answer because you need these results to do sums. Now suppose if you are going to do Z, which is multiplication of A into B. So we will write Z can carry an absolute error, could be plus or minus delta Z, the error in Z, the final result. In the readings that you took, A has an absolute error of delta A multiplied by B has an absolute error of delta B. Now this is multiplication, so I'm going to open the bracket as A into B first. So that is A into B. Then A into this will be plus or minus, this plus or minus, A into delta B. Then I'm going to multiply this to this. So that is a plus or minus B into delta A. And then I'm going to multiply this into this. So plus or minus delta A delta B. Now this you can neglect. Why? Because delta A and delta B are very small. So if you multiply two quantities which are small already, then you're going to get a result that is even smaller. For example, suppose you multiply 0.1 into 0.1. You're going to get 0.01, which is even smaller than the two readings. So whenever you multiply two small quantities, you can neglect that final answer because the answer of this delta A into delta B will be even smaller than delta A and delta B. So neglect that term. So we have here Z plus or minus delta Z. Okay. Now I'm going to divide throughout with Z. So here the first one, z by z will be 1 plus or minus delta z by z. This is equal to AB is actually z only, no? Z is equal to A into B. So if I divide AB by z, you should get 1 because AB is anyway z, plus or minus. If I divide this with A into B, this A and this A will get cancelled. Here this will get cancelled and I will have delta B by B. Then if I plus or minus, if I divide this with A into B, Z is A into B, then this B and this B will get cancelled and I'll have delta A by A. Okay. Now if I compare, you will see this 1 and this 1 common, both left hand side and right hand side. So I may write delta Z by Z is equal to, plus or minus I'll take common outside. You have, here also you have, this 1 is what I cancelled. Here I have plus or minus delta Z by delta Z is delta A by A plus delta B by B. Here I have taken the plus or minus common outside. So you see delta Z by Z is delta A by A plus delta B by B. What is this delta Z by Z? Delta Z by Z is what you call as relative error. Remember, relative error we defined as ratio of absolute error to the true value, A mean. So delta Z by Z is called the relative error in Z, that is a result. Delta A by A is called the relative error in reading A, and delta B by B is called the relative error in B, the reading that you've taken as B. So relative error in the final result will be the sum of relative errors in the individual readings if you're multiplying two values to get the final result, is it? Okay, so this is the third one. The fourth one is Z is equal to A by B, division A by B. Now derivation for that is not given in your textbook, but the final result is given. It is equivalent to doing this only. Only thing is here, because B is in the denominator, you will get a minus 1 here. That's all. But after you do this whole thing, you will get the same result like this. Delta Z by Z is equal to delta A by A plus delta B by B. That derivation is not required for you because it's not there in the textbook, and anyway it's equivalent to this multiplication. Only thing, there's a minus 1 here. So you will apply binomial theorem to bring this minus 1 here. So this will become minus into plus. So it doesn't essentially change the derivation. Same derivation. You will reach delta Z by Z is equal to delta A by A plus delta B by B. So that means whether you are multiplying two quantities or dividing two quantities to get the final result, both times the relative error in the final result will be equal to sum of relative errors in the individual readings. Then the last one is whenever you have reading raised to some power, some value raised to some power. For example, let's say you have Z as A square. Let's say we have the final value, you are raising that reading A to power 2. This is equivalent to writing A into A, right? So we already know when two quantities are multiplied, we know delta Z by Z, relative error in the result must be relative error, sum of relative errors in the individual quantities. So this will be delta A by A plus delta A by A. Because we just derived that when you multiply two quantities, the relative error in the final result will be the sum of the relative error in the individual readings. So we have this, and this is what 2 delta A by A, right? So we can generalize and write, if we have Z is equal to A raised to N, then relative error in that result is N times the relative error in that reading. This is the final result for any quantity that is raised to N, power N. So you need to know all these rules for us to do the problems. So I will stop with this last topic here. I think there's a few more, maybe significant errors and rounding off of numbers. I'll check the new syllabus and then put up the last video for this chapter. Otherwise, we are towards the end of this chapter. I'll also be sending you the sums that are worked out, and then we'll come online and discuss the different problems. Okay? Thank you. Bye.